When people talk about alcohol addiction, they often describe it as something that takes over a person's life. But very few actually understand what is happening inside the brain when someone becomes dependent on alcohol. The changes are not random, and they are not simply the result of weak will or poor discipline. What happens is a series of deeply rooted biological shifts that reshape the way the brain communicates, prioritizes, remembers, and reacts to the world. To grasp how alcohol takes hold, it makes sense to first understand the regions of the brain that get pulled into this internal tug of war, because alcohol does not affect the mind in a casual or temporary way. It alters the very systems that normally help us regulate choices, pursue rewards, and protect ourselves. At the front of the brain sits the region responsible for deliberate thinking, reasoning, analyzing consequences, and making long-term decisions. This is the area that helps someone pause before acting, evaluate outcomes, weigh possibilities, and choose behaviors that align with logic rather than impulse. When people speak about self-control or good judgment, they are unknowingly describing the work of this area. Under normal conditions, it communicates clearly and confidently, guiding a person toward better choices. But alcohol dependence weakens this structure's influence. Because alcohol repeatedly interferes with the messages flowing through this region, its ability to slow impulses or evaluate risks gradually declines. What once felt like a firm internal voice becomes a faint whisper, leaving the brain vulnerable to habit-driven reactions rather than conscious decisions. Deeper in the brain lies a system devoted to reward and pleasure. This system keeps a record of what once felt enjoyable. A favorite dessert, the warmth of a comforting conversation, or the calming effect of a familiar environment. When something brings pleasure, this system stores that memory and gently urges the person to seek that feeling again. In a healthy brain, this reward circuit is balanced. It motivates people to pursue natural sources of satisfaction like meaningful relationships, fulfilling work, creativity, or enjoyable activities. But alcohol does not activate this system in a normal way. Instead, it overstimulates it. From the first significant exposure to alcohol, this part of the brain receives signals far stronger than what any natural reward can create. The memory of that intense sensation gets recorded, and the brain begins to treat alcohol as a highly valuable experience. Over time, this record becomes more than a memory. It becomes a demand. Then comes the region that is often overlooked in casual discussions about addiction. Yet it plays one of the most powerful roles in the entire process. This part of the brain is responsible for survival-driven instincts. Breathing, reacting to danger, orienting the senses, and responding to urgent threats. Unlike the logical part at the front, this region does not think far into the future. It lives in the immediate present, in the next few seconds, and in whatever feels most crucial for survival. Under normal circumstances, it protects the body by ensuring that essential needs come first. But when alcohol repeatedly floods the system with chemical surges, this survival-driven region learns something dangerous. It begins to treat alcohol as if it is vital for staying alive. When a person drinks alcohol, a chemical messenger is released in extraordinary quantities. This messenger is linked to motivation, movement, learning, anticipation, and feelings of pleasure. Under normal conditions, the brain releases moderate, balanced amounts of it when someone experiences something enjoyable or rewarding. But alcohol produces a level of activation that is far above natural range. It creates a wave of signaling so strong that the brain struggles to interpret it in relation to real-world experiences. It is not an ordinary pleasure. It is an artificial flooding that the brain was never designed to handle in such intensity. Because this pleasure surge is overwhelming, the brain releases another chemical messenger that plays a key role in forming and strengthening memories. Its job is to ensure that important experiences are remembered clearly and stored deeply. When this chemical is triggered during alcohol use, the brain records extremely detailed memories about how alcohol felt, where it was consumed, what emotions were present, and how quickly relief or pleasure appeared. This does not happen with ordinary experiences. Alcohol ties these memory-forming processes into its own cycle, making it easier and easier for the brain to recall and seek alcohol in the future. These two chemicals, working together in exaggerated amounts, begin to reshape priorities in the survival-driven region of the brain. What used to recognize real threats, needs, or dangers becomes increasingly focused on alcohol as a top priority. The survival system becomes hypersensitive to the absence of alcohol, interpreting that absence as a crisis rather than a normal state. This is why someone dependent on alcohol often feels a powerful sense of urgency or panic when they try to stop. Their brain is sending signals that mimic the sensation of life or death need. Even though the rational part of their mind may clearly understand that alcohol is harmful, as this survival-driven region becomes more sensitive to alcohol cues, the logical reasoning center loses influence. It is not that the person is unaware of the consequences of drinking. It is not that they fail to understand the harm alcohol has caused. It is that the messages from the deeper brain regions override the slower, more reflective signals from the front. The survival-oriented system reacts first, and it reacts with enormous force, pushing the brain toward behaviors that maintain alcohol intake, even when every logical part of the mind knows it should stop. This is why someone caught in alcohol dependence often experiences a painful internal conflict. One part of the mind wants to change, wants to stop, wants to regain control. But the deeper system responsible for immediate survival needs screams for alcohol as if it is oxygen. Before the conscious mind even has time to evaluate the situation, the survival brain has already fired its signals, urging the person to reach for the bottle, creating a sense of automatic behavior rather than a deliberate choice. It feels as if the body moves before the mind decides. This conflict intensifies because alcohol repeatedly weakens the logical center. With each cycle of drinking and withdrawal, communication between the thinking brain and the survival brain becomes less coordinated. The survival region becomes louder, and the logical region becomes quieter. This shift explains why responsibilities begin to slip, why motivation drains, why relationships are strained, and why daily life becomes more chaotic. It is not laziness or carelessness. It is the result of the brain reorganizing its priorities incorrectly, placing alcohol at the top of its needs list. The survival region does not measure consequences years down the line. It does not analyze next month's responsibilities or the long-term impact on health. It only reacts to what it believes is needed right now. And because alcohol dependency conditions this region to believe alcohol is essential, it treats its absence as a threat. This is why cravings feel so overwhelming. They are not simple desires. They are survival-level alarms triggered by a brain that has been rewired to misinterpret alcohol as something life-sustaining. Understanding this internal process helps explain why stopping alcohol is not as simple as deciding to stop. The thinking part of the brain may want to stop. It may fully recognize the damage alcohol has caused. But the survival-oriented brain reacts before reasoning can step in. It sends urgent signals, creates intense discomfort, and triggers emotional distress when alcohol is not present. The result is a tug-of-war between conscious intention and biological instinct. This does not mean recovery is impossible. It means the process requires approaches that acknowledge how deeply alcohol alters these regions. The brain is always capable of change, and over time, with consistent support, reduced exposure, and healthier patterns, the survival center can relearn what is truly essential. The logic-driven region can regain strength, and the reward circuit can gradually re-anchor itself in natural sources of satisfaction. But none of this happens through willpower alone. It happens through neurochemical recalibration, repetition of healthier behaviors, and gradual restructuring of pathways that alcohol distorted. When a person decides to step away from alcohol after the brain has grown accustomed to its presence, what unfolds inside them is far more complex than a simple change of habit. The moment alcohol leaves the bloodstream, the same survival-driven system that once overreacted to its presence begins to panic at its absence. Because the brain rewired itself to treat alcohol as a life-preserving requirement, removing it triggers a powerful internal alarm. This reaction is not symbolic. It is biochemical, real, and deeply rooted. The brain starts sending signals of distress, urgency, discomfort, and dissatisfaction because it mistakenly interprets alcohol withdrawal as a threat comparable to dehydration, starvation, or extreme cold. For someone experiencing this from the inside, it can feel as if the world has suddenly shifted. Thoughts become cloudy, emotions become unstable, restlessness grows, and the body feels unsettled. These sensations are not signs of weakness. They are symptoms of the brain recalibrating after being conditioned to rely on alcohol's immediate chemical influence. The survival-centered part of the brain sends wave after wave of distress because it is trying to restore what it believes is essential for safety. Even though the logical part of the mind knows alcohol is harmful, parts of the deeper brain do not differentiate between harmful and helpful. They only recognize patterns that were reinforced repeatedly. During this period of adjustment, the reward center of the brain becomes unusually quiet. Because alcohol artificially overstimulated it, natural sources of pleasure struggle to trigger the same response. Activities that once felt enjoyable, conversations, hobbies, food, rest, exercise, may feel flat, dull, or distant. This emotional numbness is not permanent. It is part of the resetting process. The reward system, having been overwhelmed by alcohol's intensity, temporarily pulls back its responsiveness. It begins to rebuild its natural range slowly, but in the early stages of withdrawal, it cannot yet fire with the same sensitivity as before alcohol dominance. Meanwhile, the logical, decision-oriented part of the brain is caught in the middle of an internal storm. It tries to push through the noise, attempting to remind the rest of the brain why change is necessary. But the signals it sends are quiet compared to the survival brain's alarms. This imbalance is why early recovery feels emotionally and mentally exhausting. The thinking brain is trying to regain control, while the instinctive brain is sending messages of emergency. This clash produces internal chaos. Overthinking, fear, irritability, confusion, emotional vulnerability, and an overwhelming urge to make the discomfort stop quickly. In this stage, many people mistakenly believe they are failing because they cannot stop thinking about alcohol. But those intrusive thoughts are not moral failings. They are the survival brain seeking relief. The deeper system has not yet learned that alcohol is no longer a requirement. Each craving is simply a reflex triggered by old pathways, not an accurate reflection of what the person truly wants. As the brain continues adapting, these reflexes slowly weaken. The timing is different for everyone, but the pattern remains consistent. The first stage is dominated by survival signals, the second by recalibration, and the later stages by gradual restoration of natural balance. As days pass, something extraordinary starts to happen inside the brain. The chemical messengers that were disrupted by alcohol begin to stabilize. They start shifting back toward a healthier rhythm. The part of the brain responsible for memory begins separating real needs from conditioned cravings. The survival region becomes less reactive. The reward system begins opening up again. And the logical region slowly becomes stronger, gaining the clarity it lost during heavy drinking. This recovery is not a single event. It is a biological rebuilding that happens hour by hour, week by week, as the brain learns to live without alcohol saturating its circuits. When the brain begins to repair itself, a person often experiences moments of unexpected clarity. These flashes of awareness feel like someone opening curtains in a dim room. Colors seem sharper, thoughts flow more freely, emotions become more understandable, and the world begins to feel less heavy. These moments are signs that the logical part of the brain is regaining influence. The survival brain, once frantic, begins to quiet. It still reacts occasionally, sending urges or old memories linked to alcohol. But the voice of panic starts losing its authority. The reasoning center, given enough consistency and alcohol-free time, gradually takes back governance. At the same time, the reward region begins rediscovering natural pleasures. A walk outdoors, a meaningful conversation, good food, creative expression, a restful night of sleep, or simple moments of calm begin to register as enjoyable again. This is because the brain has started restoring its sensitivity to natural stimuli. Activities that once felt empty slowly become fulfilling. This is a sign that the brain is healing at a deeper level, rebuilding pathways that alcohol had flattened. The pleasure system becomes more balanced, no longer demanding extreme stimulation to feel something meaningful. However, the survival brain still carries old memories tied to alcohol. These memories do not vanish overnight. They appear through triggers, places, smells, emotions, certain times of day, or stressful moments. These triggers activate stored associations the brain formed when alcohol dominated its chemistry. During recovery, these old signals can surface, but they are much weaker than before. They are like echoes of an experience the person is no longer living. Each time the brain resists a craving without giving in, it rewires itself toward independence rather than dependence. The memories lose intensity, the pathways lose strength, and the brain learns new responses. As weeks turn to months, the logical part of the brain continues building strength. It becomes more confident in regulating impulses. Decision-making becomes clearer. Planning becomes easier. Emotional control improves. The survival region no longer reacts to alcohol absence as if it is an emergency. It begins redirecting its attention to true biological needs: rest, nutrition, safety, hydration, meaningful activity. The reward system becomes more balanced, responding positively to ordinary experiences again. What felt impossible in the early stages begins to feel natural. This rebuilt balance between the three major brain systems is one of the most powerful transformations a person can experience. The survival center stops prioritizing alcohol. The pleasure center stops craving artificial stimulation, and the reasoning center stops being silenced. This internal harmony brings back emotional stability, mental clarity, and a renewed sense of self. It is the opposite of what addiction does. Addiction compresses the world until alcohol becomes the center of everything. Recovery expands the world again, allowing the person to see life with a broader, clearer perspective. Another important shift involves how the brain handles stress. When alcohol dominated the system, stress signals and alcohol cravings were tightly linked. The survival brain learned that alcohol provided quick relief, even if that relief was artificial and harmful. During recovery, the brain slowly relearns healthier responses to stress. Instead of automatically reaching for alcohol, it starts building new habits. Breathing through anxiety, taking breaks, seeking support, using healthy routines, and relying on coping strategies that do not involve chemical shortcuts. This is how resilience is rebuilt. It takes time, repetition, and patience. But the internal wiring gradually changes. As this rewiring continues, something else significant emerges. The person begins reconnecting with their own identity. Alcohol dependence blurs one's sense of self because the survival system becomes so dominant that personal values, goals, and interests are overshadowed. When the brain heals, that fog begins to lift. Passions return. Dreams feel possible again. The ability to think deeply without interruption reappears. Emotional experiences become richer. The inner world opens up in ways that were not possible during heavy alcohol use. This reconnection is not just emotional. It is a sign that the brain is functioning in a more integrated and balanced way. The process does not end at a specific milestone. It continues evolving. The brain remains capable of improvement long after alcohol has left the system. Circuits continue strengthening. Emotional intelligence continues growing, and the capacity for long-term satisfaction increases. Recovery is not the absence of alcohol. It is the restoration of the brain's true functioning. Every day without alcohol gives the brain more room to rebuild, reorganize, and rediscover its natural equilibrium. Understanding these changes helps people see alcohol addiction for what it truly is, an alteration of the brain's internal hierarchy. It is not about moral choices or character flaws. It is a neurological rerouting where the survival system misidentifies alcohol as essential. The reward system becomes overstimulated, and the reasoning system becomes weakened. Recovery reverses this pattern. It teaches the brain to differentiate between real needs and conditioned impulses. It brings back the thinking mind's ability to lead. It reestablishes pleasure through authentic experiences, and it quiets the survival brain's false alarms. This entire transformation is a testament to the brain's resilience. Even after periods of heavy alcohol use, the brain does not give up on restoration. It continuously attempts to heal, rebuild, and stabilize. Every moment alcohol is removed, the brain takes another step toward equilibrium, regardless of how small that step may seem. And with consistent time away from alcohol, the brain does not simply return to where it was. It becomes stronger, clearer, and more capable than it was during dependence.